Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modular Online Training Program conducted by CIMA Regional Training Center in Vietnam, CIMA RETRAC. My name is Chiu Liu, Program Officer at the International Development Department of CIMA RETRAC, and I will be the moderator of today's section. Let me start by giving you a brief information about our Modular Online Training Program. As part of our mission of assisting CIMA member countries, starting in May 2021 and continuing through February 2022, 16 online lectures were presented to about 1,000 participants who are leaders, managers, administrators, and teachers in the region. In March 2022, CIMA RETRAC has designed 2 new modules with 4 topics for each module from March to June. Each module will cover 4 topics divided into 2 sections. Covered this morning will be Module 6 on classroom management with the 2 topics, inclusive classroom management and equitable classroom management. Before we start, I would like to mention a little housekeeping. Our webinar is video recorded, so please watch and listen to the video. The video will be less than 30 minutes. If you have any questions during the video, kindly type them into the chat box, and after the video, we will have time for questions and answer with our trainer, Dr. Anita. About Dr. Anita Clapano-Oblina, she obtained her doctorate degree in education planning and management in the Philippines and have been in the field of education and engaged in administrative functions back in the Philippines. She was the assistant to the academic vice president at Xavier University in 2014 and dean of faculty and academic affairs at FINMA Cagayan de Oro College from 2015 to 2017. In 2018, she came back to CIMA RETRAC as a senior education specialist and has been working as a curriculum developer, instructional materials designer, trainer, researcher, and lecturer. She is very passionate about advancing the leadership and management skills of the school leaders, managers, administrators, and teachers in Southeast Asia. Before turning over to our trainer, I would like to take some group photos of everybody. So please kindly turn on your camera for the photo shoot. Thank you very much. So we will take 3 shots. For the first shot, for the second shot, and for the third shot. Thank you very much, everybody. So now I would like to invite Dr. Anita to have some words with our dear participants.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction, Ms. Chow. And I would like to really welcome our participants today. My warmest greetings to all of you. I'd like to mention our participants today. We are from Cambodia, Lao PDR, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, and we also have from the YouTube participants. I guess we have from Timor-Leste, Indonesia, Singapore. Welcome to our webinar. And now, as already mentioned, we have 2 topics. We have topic 21, inclusive classroom management, and topic 22, equitable classroom management. As already said, this is a video recorded. And so we will now first take topic 21, inclusive classroom management. We will first watch the video, and then I will be very glad to welcome your questions or insights, or maybe experiences that you would like to share with us about how you manage your inclusive classroom. Okay, now we will proceed to watching the video. Warmest greetings to everyone. Welcome to our Module 6,
classroom management module. Today, we will examine the first two topics, topics 21 and 22, address inclusive and equitable classroom management, respectively. Let's begin by discussing topic 21, inclusive classroom management. We will examine the following key points. What is inclusive classroom? What are the pillars of inclusive classroom management? And what are the strategies to enhance inclusive classroom management? What is inclusive classroom? Inclusive classrooms are designed so that students with disabilities or impairments can learn alongside peers who may or may not have specific needs in an age-appropriate general education setting, as well as students from diverse social and economic backgrounds, minority language speakers, different regions, and sexual orientations. Inclusive classrooms ensure that all these students are treated fairly and have access to technology and general education. Students with disabilities thrive in the presence of their peers with and without disabilities. There are so many lessons that students with disabilities can learn from other students and so many friendships to be formed. However, inclusive classroom requires classroom management plan. It is established to make the classroom a little less chaotic for teachers and a lot more predictable for students. It must be responsive to students with learning differences, physical challenges, or social emotional needs, as well as students without disabilities. Classroom management is an umbrella term which incorporates all the duties within a classroom that a teacher must enforce to keep the class running smoothly and with minimal disruptive behaviors. This brings us to the second key point of my presentation. What are the pillars of inclusive classroom management? The emerging education literature indicates the four pillars of proactive inclusive practices. Pillar 1, focus. Pillar 2, engage. Pillar 3, arrange. And Pillar 4, reflect. Pillar 1, focus. Keeping students focused on the learning task is important in inclusive classroom management for two reasons. First, time on task is highly correlated to achievement. Second, time on task reduces classroom misbehavior. Differentiation, cooperative learning, assessment, and communication are key instructional strategies to keep your students on the learning task. Differentiation. The essence of instruction in today's classroom is differentiation. Differentiation is defined as systematically varying the learning content, product, and the teaching and learning process to match the unique learning profile of individual students. A number of models for differentiating instruction in classrooms are available, and each model emphasizes that variations in the lessons related to the amount of work required, the time allocated to complete the exercise, presentation format, time of response required, and assistance needed are critical. Cooperative learning. Cooperative learning can facilitate active learning, promote social interaction, help develop social skills, and promote academic skills development. It involves structuring classes around small groups that work together in such a way that each group member's success is dependent on the group's success. The core element of cooperative learning is to showcase the positive effects of interdependence while underlining the importance of personal responsibility. This happens naturally in cooperative learning since students work with one another, but they all have a different task to accomplish or concept to explain. Assessing outcomes. Novice teachers often believe that assessing students with diverse needs requires specialized training and years of experience. In reality, most teachers automatically consider instructional and assessment strategies that will fit students they have in a given grade or class. The following assessment considerations fit for a wide variety of learners' needs. Test questions and or directions are delivered in a different format. Test questions include multiple response options. Test time allocations, scheduling, and location are adjusted. Provision for specialized equipment is provided based on the individualized education program, and a proctor, someone to read directions and or questions, is provided as needed. And communication. Question and answer activities play a role in promoting effective classroom management. Well-prepared question and answer activities in class lessons increase student engagement and a sense of belonging in the instructional experience, and help teachers to react constructively when students fail to respond appropriately or opt to respond not at all. The critical strategies are wait time for responses and wait time for teacher feedback. Pillar 2, engage. Belonging has been identified as a critical element in how children approach and sustain effort in the classroom. Students will not be motivated to engage in the most intrinsically interesting tasks if they fear humiliation or rejection from their teachers and peers. In-class cooperation happens when students have a sense they belong to a class and are making a contribution to that class. Students' sense of belonging, the degree to which they perceive acceptance and rejection, plays a role in the amount of energy, focus, and commitment they devote to achievement. To increase student connectedness and achievement motivation in inclusive classrooms, the following are recommended. Focus on effort over success and or failure outcomes. Utilize authentic assessment. Change the way students think about success and failure. Teach them that success is a result of their effort and failure is a result of their lack of a good strategy. Help students adjust their personal theory of intelligence. Students who believe their intelligence as fixed are less likely to approach and persist in new learning experiences. Students who believe their intelligence as changeable or correctable are more likely to persevere. Use cooperative learning experiences, for example, jigsaw, scaffolding, among others. Pillar 3, arrange. Organizing and administering a classroom requires an analysis of the interplay between teaching options and the physical environment that contains the educational experience. In addition, the physical arrangements, rules, and procedures are critical to manage the overall classroom experience, especially transition activities and seating arrangements. Physical arrangements. Effective teachers pre-plan the organization of their learning environment. Important questions to consider include the following. What will be the main types of instructional activities? For example, small groups, whole class discussions, teacher presentation, student presentations, individual assignments, group projects, among others. What physical arrangement will best support these activities? How much movement within the class is anticipated? What areas of the room will be involved? How flexible or permanent will the arrangement be? How often will the arrangement need to be changed? Daily, weekly, monthly? Where will students with behavior problems, susceptibility to distractions, and sensory impairments be located? Rules and procedures. Rules and procedures help the students act and react in orderly or disciplined ways throughout the school day. Rules, on the other hand, focus on behavior in general. The development of rules is complicated and personal experience. However, effective classroom rules should pinpoint expectations and standards for behavior and consequences for misbehavior. Changes in rules should include a start date and a justification that is told to the class prior to the implementation of change. All changes should be modeled and practiced. Pillar 4, reflect. Today's students interact with the teacher, each other, and the curriculum in ways that require teachers to routinely analyze and upgrade their methodology. This process is called reflection. Rogers 2002 defines reflection generally as an ongoing process of inquiry. Reflection involves 3 separate but interactive dimensions: problem solving, review of content and professional literature, and conversations with colleagues. Rogers' 4 phases of reflection are as follows. Phase 1. Presence to an experience. A willingness to see classroom events as events requiring analysis. These happenings may include a tried and true lesson activity that does not engage the class, the emergence of a new behavior dimension, a new student's difficulty adjusting to the rhythms and activities of the class, and or a student who ostracized from his or her cooperative learning group. Phase 2. Describe the experience. Name the problems and or questions that arise out of accepting and thinking about the experience. This includes avoiding spontaneous or uninformed interpretations and responses. Rogers labels this activity the discipline of description, or a dedicated attempt to collect and analyze the facts and or evidence that surround the experience. When considering behaviors, effective teachers explore the behavior and what happened before and after the behavior. Phase 3. Analysis of the experience. Generate possible explanations that grow organically from the data and evidence. Rogers argues that teachers need to spend enough time with the data of experience so that it can emerge in all its complexity. And phase 4, action. The reflective teacher now articulates a response based on knowledge and awareness of the learner, oneself, the subject matter, the context within which we all operate, and the dynamic interaction among all of these. The end game of the reflective process is to transform classroom experiences into a deeper and richer understanding of teacher behavior that results in more effective practices. Let me reiterate the pillars of inclusive classroom management. They are focus, engage, arrange, and reflect. The next question in mind is, are there ways to improve managing an inclusive classroom? This takes us to the last key point of my presentation. What are the strategies to enhance inclusive classroom management? Here are some research-based strategies for inclusive classroom management. Establish relationship with students. Let's face it, you spend a whole lot of time with your students over the course of a year. Often, you spend more face-to-face time with them than their parents or guardians. Of all the research-based strategies available to you, one of the most important aspects is developing a real relationship with your students. The students need to believe that you are invested in them and that you know them. It goes beyond smiling and welcoming them, although important. You need to find a way to make a connection with every student. Some students come from a home where they don't have positive relationships with adults. They will be wary. Work to get to know their interests, their love languages, learn about their life outside of school, attempt to and teach them about real conversations. Why do quality relationships matter? Because when there are inevitable behavior issues that arise, you have goodwill, and students who invest in a positive way with you are less likely to misbehave or less likely to want to give you a difficult time because you have this strong relationship. Positive learning environment. As a teacher, you know you need to pay attention to a student's intellectual, emotional, physical, and social needs. You need to set up your inclusive classroom that aims to meet those needs in each and every student in your room. Establishing a positive learning environment where the focus is on both learning and positives will go a long way in curbing student behaviors. If students know that you will meet their needs and remain positive, they will be less likely to show you those negative behaviors. Of course, you have to have a classroom with good procedures and expectations, so students already understand how the classroom will function. In inclusive classrooms, students will want to know you are there to support their learning and will help them when the learning is challenging for them. You create accommodations and scaffolds to help them learn like a student without a disability. Set expectations. Students understand schools have rules. As a teacher, you want to let your students know about your expectations. There are a few students who by nature are rule followers, but many who are not rule followers, and some of them with disabilities will also test those expectations. The more you can establish expectations with your students about how your classroom operates, the more likely students will be to follow them. How do you establish those expectations? You need to have clear and concise communications with students, routine and practice. Students know what things bother them in the classroom. Establish routine and practice routines. Talk together as a class to establish norms of behavior that you all agree to abide by. When they are invested in creating those norms, they are much more likely to follow them. Organize your lessons. Teachers need to focus on thoughtful and deliberate lesson design so students stay engaged in what is being taught. The higher the engagement in the learning, the less likely there will be behavior issues. Students need to know the objectives of their lesson and what to expect them to learn. They need to have opportunities for practice and multiple checks for understanding. These are all engagement strategies for students that keep them focused on the lesson and not on negative behaviors. Focus on strengths. Sometimes, when a student is being particularly difficult, it's easy to forget that everyone is good at something. Students forget this too, especially if they struggle with academic work in school. Often, educators see students misbehave as a coping mechanism for when they don't understand what school wants them to learn. It's so important for both teachers and students to remember that everyone is good at something, and if you are struggling with a student, you need to focus on his or her strengths. Many students in inclusive classroom have behavior intervention plans to help them modulate their behavior. Use student strengths and interests to build those behavior plans so they will be more effective in curbing unwanted behaviors. As you focus on strengths, you can use those to engage students too. Great students. Don't underestimate the huge impact a greeting can have. Offer students an enthusiastic, sincere greeting. When you greet them individually, it does several important things. You have set the tone for how the class will go. You have established a positive interaction. One study suggests that greeting students at the door can get you a 20% boost in student engagement. This is a pretty big boost for being at the door with a friendly and personalized greeting. The other value is that you can get a gauge almost right away for how a student is feeling. You see their face and interact personally with them. As you get to know your student, you will know right away if they are having an off day and can be prepared for it. You can also use their specific social strategies to counteract a potential problem right at the beginning of the day. Active supervision. Gone are the days in education where the teacher sits behind a desk facing students that quietly work and behave while the teacher grades papers. Students need to see you actively involved in what's happening in the classroom. Proximity is very effective in addressing potential negative behaviors. Maybe students are working on something quietly. Instead of sitting behind your desk, go sit next to or near a student. You can monitor what they are doing, and your presence helps prevent negative behaviors from happening. Students will quickly get used to seeing you moving around the room. You can answer questions as you move around. You can answer questions and have small, quiet conferences with students. Don't think of this as you watching them, looking for unwanted behaviors. Instead, approach it positively as a way to interact about what they are working on. Ignore. There are some who might think that ignoring bad behaviors is not a good strategy. However, it can be a very effective strategy when ignoring is done deliberately. If you have a behavior that is causing problems for a particular student in the classroom, instead of continually addressing it, try to ignore it. Then give the student positive feedback for other things. Recognize the students around the non-compliant student who are doing the things you want them to do. It will be challenging to ignore, there's a doubt. But when the student realizes he might not get the feedback or reaction he was trying for, eventually it's likely he will comply and do what is asked of him. And optimize your seating plan. As teachers, you know that if you let your students choose their seats, then they might not make the best choices. Yet, the more ownership you give students, the more likely they will be to comply. There are some students who will need separate seating. They will even appreciate it. Maybe they need to be separate because it provides them a place to work with fewer distractions or stimuli. As educators, you need to make deliberate decisions about where and how students choose to sit and work. One of the biggest challenges you will face in an inclusive classroom will be managing unwanted behaviors. Be proactive and try one of these above-mentioned strategies to get your classroom running smoothly. I just finished my presentation. I hope you pick up some ideas and insights from my lecture which you could apply in your own context. I would like to end my presentation with a few thoughts. Inclusive classrooms are becoming more important as our awareness of people, cultures, and societies grow. And inclusive classrooms become the demanding environments for teachers. Teachers are expected to manage the academic and behavioral needs and development of a diverse population of students. Emerging literature provides guidance. First, teachers think and plan proactively to focus all students on the learning task. Second, teachers consider the instructional strategies that increase engagement of all students in the learning and social experience of the classroom. Third, teachers pay attention to how their classrooms are physically and functionally arranged. And fourth, teachers regularly reflect on their approaches, that is, assess their practices and outcomes, problem solve, check the literature, and upgrade their strategies to meet the changing needs of their diverse classes. In summary, the literature indicates that fear of inclusion can be replaced by the fear, focus, engage, arrange, and reflect practices, as well as the research-based strategies. These are the keys to effective, inclusive classroom management. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you very much for the video. And now we will have the discussion with Dr. Anita. So please, participants, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box, or you can also unmute yourself and discuss with Dr. Anita. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chow. So we are now in the Q&A. Okay, now I guess I have found a question here, an idea here on the chat board. This is from Mr. Emmanuel Yap. Here in the Philippines, we have SPED, okay, that's special education. In some schools, which caters to those learners who need special kinds of learning care. How beautiful it will be to have SPED class in every school. True. I found out that even the LDS, or with learning difficulties, can be linked to very poor academic performance of students in class. And I strongly agree with the focus and strength in dealing with it and making active supervision. We can somehow effectively address issues in differently abled learners. Okay, thank you so much for your insights, and I definitely agree with you. In the Philippines, we have just like SPED, like education for students with disabilities as a separate classroom. But we hope that in our inclusive education, that these students who may have disabilities and maybe problems of their socioeconomic status and other issues will be incorporated, in the mainstream. And that's the purpose of the special education program, of the inclusive education program. But I definitely agree with you saying that it would be really beautiful if we can put them in one class. Is that? And then you mentioned here about the learning difficulties. That's really the problem. I think that's the concern, not only in the Philippines, but in the developing countries. We have this problem on how we can be able to accelerate the learning of our students, especially those who are, I would say, have disabilities. And this very kind of you when you mentioned that we should not forget that each student has a strength, that everyone is good at something, and that we will enhance that, we will uplift that. We look at what is the strength and what is the weakness of the student. And of course, we're going to let the students be uplifted in our class, so that if there will be weaknesses and limitations, we try to help, up the students, uplift the students, while at the same time we look at the strength and then focus on that. It depends on the situations. It depends. Thank you. And of course, the active supervision. That's right. We have to monitor. We should be there for our students. So that is inclusive classroom management. We treat our students equally, and we are there to help them get what they deserve and be able to learn to maximize their talents. Maybe some talents are still hidden, and we are there to identify what are the hidden talents of our students. I hope I have given you my insights as well, and you can have a microphone and you can follow it up. Perhaps you have more insights to share, and you are much welcome.
So while waiting for our participants to have more questions, so do you have anything else that you would like to input or share regarding inclusive classroom management?
Okay, I think it is clear to us teachers that when we speak of classroom management, that has to do with how we are able to like deliver our lesson. That's why I mentioned about the fear, you see, the focus. First one, we have to focus on like how we will be able to keep the time of our students on learning, so that we will be able to minimize their unwanted behaviors. And my presentation tells us that we're going to look for teaching strategies, that would enhance students focusing on the learning task. I made mention about differentiation, so that we will be able to address to the different sets of our students' level of competency and multiple intelligence, and readiness. And another thing is we use cooperative learning. And I guess you know that. As we can also use like learning by doing. Anything that we will see students are actively engaged. They are learning in the process. They discover something. And we see when we learn by our own discovery, we are more delighted. And that we never forget that than learning from people telling us what it is all about. And that makes a difference. So let's focus and then engaged. So when we get the focus, the attention of the students, then we come to let them engage doing. Let the students discover, let the students learn in an inclusive classroom. So again, classroom management, we manage our students to perform well. So focus, engage, and then after that, teachers need to reflect. They've got to sit down. They've got to spend time, thinking about what's happening during the day. Probably after the class, or maybe we don't have time after the class. In the afternoon, when we already finished the day, or maybe at night. It depends on your own time schedule. But it will always be helpful to take time to reflect. By reflecting, so there were phases of reflection process that I have shared with you. You may pick up one, or it depends on what you need, but it is necessary to do it. And once you have reflected over, analyze what's happening, and then see connections, then you do something for the second time. There must be action. So the effect of what we learn in process through reflection of that experience happening in the classroom will be manifested. That result will be manifested in the class. So there is action. Or maybe experimentation, whatever will that be in your mind. But that's quite important, in handling inclusive classroom. Because we are expecting different learners, diverse learners. And we would like them to learn depending on their level. But we hope that we don't leave a student aside. No students are left out in the learning process. Okay, I hope I have shared with you. Thank you so much. Now I
Hello.
guess we have one here.
Ma'am, Dr. Oblina, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. It's nice to see you once again.
Yes. Yes, I remember. I
Yes,
see.
ma'am. I'm from Philippines. Proud to be. Ah, ma'am,
We are-
I am the assistant principal in Liloy National High School, Zamboanga del Norte Division,
Mhm.
and I am assigned in the senior high school po.
Oh.
I understand that this inclusive classroom management is something like parallel to the teaching strategies. Okay. Um, I just want to ask if should there be specific or something parallel to this with regards to the strategies that we are going to use in the senior high school. Um, for the fact that in senior high school we have the so-called immersion time with our students. I just wanted to know, should there be teaching strat for the senior high school specifically? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So I guess senior high school is like level already. We are I
Yes,
would
ma'am.
say,
Yes, ma'am.
ready for higher education. So the question now is that are there strategies that we can use in order to maximize the learning of our inclusive
Yes,
students?
ma'am.
So I presume that your students are diverse. Okay, maybe diverse in terms of ethnical backgrounds and diverse in terms of maybe religions and diverse in terms of languages. Because you have ethnical groups, and of course you have their own language, their own mother tongue, I suppose. Now, question is, what strategy do we use to allow all the students to participate?
Ajay, Gmail ko, ma'am. I-forward ko kanya yun, ma'am.
Now,
Ma'am, email.
I guess, are we still in? Yes. I guess
Yes, ma'am. Copy.
now, the thing I would rather suggest that we use differentiation. I suppose you are using differentiation already. By differentiation, I would say you're going to it's really right. You group your students, you classify students based on their maybe competency or level of readiness,
Okay.
or maybe I don't know if you can do it also in terms of their language.
You mean, ma'am, differentiated instruction?
Yeah, differentiated instruction.
Okay.
That would be very good because we will be feeling comfortable with that. Now, what I mean by differentiated instruction is that we have the same content. We don't sacrifice the curriculum because we're following the curriculum, right? But when we speak of differentiated instruction, here we are going to adjust our teaching, the way we deliver the lesson, and also the activities, because when we give like group work or individual, that would depend on your activities. We try to differentiate activities to the multiple intelligence, to the intelligence level of the students. Like maybe some are good at kinesthetic, you would like to move and they would like to perform. Okay, give them that. And others would like maybe to just present in a PowerPoint. You would like to have more, like maybe visual, like, okay, I can prepare more my idea in presentation and give that to the students. Or maybe others would like to do it they would like to make maybe form deliver a song or a role play, you know. So, or maybe a play, a drama, whatever. It depends on the topic. But this is now variation, and students are happy. Then giving them just one activity for the whole class. Okay, I don't know if I have. I know you're using that one. Another one is collaborative, you know, learning. You know, also what collaborative learning is. The students would be happy to discover something because here we would like students to discover their own learning with, of course, our guidance, with the target focus, the target topic that we have. What is our objective? So we have in mind the objectives and the end result of that objectives. We would like students at the end will be able to perform this. You know? And so the process is very important because that is the learning experience of the students. And I know like senior high is very active and they are like you assign research. You know? The learning there is higher. And if they are not challenged, you know, their intelligence, they will get bored. So again, in differentiation, you know, students who are advanced, you know, students who are in the middle, and you know, students who are slow. So if you give those advanced students slow, material that does not fit to their intelligence, they don't like it. So also with the slow learners, they like, you know, that would not fill into what they need. But as I said, we don't sacrifice the curriculum, the content. So I hope I have.
Yes, yes, ma'am. I can relate that one. Thank you very much.
I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, exactly.
Just my insight. So we still have here. Okay, yeah, that's true here. Differentiated instruction is really very effective. I thank you for that. And then the challenge is how do we diagnose our learners? How do we know our learners' level? It's quite complicated, maybe. Now, we teachers we have already like diagnostic test kind of. We try to give the preliminary like what's the level of my students, no? But maybe that's not enough. You can go to your guidance counselor or the one, you know, checking the students level of competency. You can work with the office, and also you can work with the other teachers. You can plan, but in your own class, you are with the activities you have, maybe aside from the group discussions, we can also gauge students from their individual outputs and their class participations and your formative assessments. We can use authentic assessments, like students perform, and then there we know we can gauge the needs of our diverse learners. But there may be something like maybe as students with disabilities, we may not be able to detect that right away. And we need assistance of our guidance counselors and people out there to help us able to know really exactly our students in terms of their level of competency and their social emotional needs, you know, and other things. And of course, now one very important factor here is to communicate to parents, to know the background of your students. So this is very important now that the family, the parent relationship, parents should come in as well. So we can get the help from the parents and the guardians, and whoever there would help us able to define the students that we would like to know better. Or not maybe define, but describe. Yes. Thank you for that insight. And we have here from Tan Li Wee. Thank you. By the way, how to manage and handle bullying issues in inclusive classroom. Since each children or students are diverse in terms of mindset and culture. And also how to motivate the special need children, students in this situation, so that they will be able to appreciate and to motivate them and appreciate their special ability. Okay, this is the first one is the bullying issues. How to manage bullying issues. I think first thing that I would like to share is that encourage your students to report if they are bullied. Because there are students who just keep quiet and they won't talk, even if they are already bullied. So encourage your students. Tell them that you're there to support. Tell them to tell. Sometimes we teachers would know what's happening to our students, but already like late. We didn't know at the start. So and tell them where to report. Sometimes they are afraid, and then they don't know who to come to report when they are bullied. So encourage them to report to teachers and then to their parents that they're bullied. That's one thing, is first thing to do. And when the bullying issues are there, how do we handle that? I think the thing here is that we should meet the students, of course. There must be session. And if the teacher cannot do it herself or himself alone, you can ask the assistance of the guidance counselor or the principal, whoever is there to help you, to assist you. Because there are cases that bullying really becomes a great issue, to the point that, it might threat students. It's a threatening. And we know well, many students suffered for that. So as I said, first is tell the students in your class that when they are bullied, they should report. Assure them of your support. And give, if you have time, you can give lecture about bullying to the whole class. And then if there are bullying issues happening, you can meet the students and, by your as a teacher, you have the I would say the power to meet them and to explain, and hopefully they will be able to be reconciled. But then if the issue is really strong and you can't do it yourself, ask the assistance. But back to the issue of bullying, I think teacher must do something here at the start of the class. I was supposed we teachers should show that we care for our students. We have a very good relationship. That's why develop real relationships with your students. We have to go back to that issue. Because once we have very good relationships with our students, then it's easy, I suppose, to come to them. And they will listen to us because they trust us. So there is this trust and respect that we develop in our classroom as inclusive classroom management. Bullying is the result, the outcome. But let's settle first the basic. Show you care, show you love. Know that you invest your time in them and that you are there when they are challenged. Okay. Thank you. So we have here from Christine Francis Mooney. Thank you for this one. And it says here, thank you for sharing with us the 4 pillars of inclusive classroom management. However, at present, many schools in the Philippines are still in online or hybrid setup. What approach and strategies in classroom management will be effective in these setups? How do we ensure that online or hybrid classes are inclusive, considering internet connectivity issues and data privacy? Thank you so much for these questions, and really very interesting one. Question 1 is that how do we manifest inclusive classroom management online? It's really quite challenging because we meet students remotely, and we cannot, really see what they're doing, what they're working on, and how do we let them feel that we are there, that we are connected with them. So there are things that are beyond our control, unlike when we have this physical classroom where we can really have our students face to face. But because of the many constraints in online teaching, I would say one strategy to have inclusive classroom management online is to feel all your students, each of your students, that each one is connected to you and that you are connected to each of your students. So we give each student a voice in the online classroom. And we listen to their needs. We see, like, we have assessment, formative assessment, like maybe question and answer, or maybe group discussion. It depends on how you assess your students in online teaching. Then there, sometimes we focus on just one group and we left behind the other. That's not inclusive. So we try to help each student connected to us, and that we teachers are connected to them. Inclusive. Equal treatment, regardless of who our students are, in terms of whether they have disabilities or without disabilities, and other constraints. Okay. Yes, I mentioned that one connection is very important, and you show that you care to your students, care for your students, and they should feel that. They should feel that. So you just go beyond like smiling at them, and there must be that aura, that there must be that spirit, that radiation, that you feel that each of them is important. And of course, you use differentiation, as already mentioned. And then now, in terms of this internet connectivity issues and data privacy, and this is not the problem. This is the challenge that we all have, that would no longer become inclusive because others could not join due to internet problem. I understand also that in the Philippines, you have, I don't know if I am correct, but you can have your modules. I don't know that modular, but I guess modular class is different from what you are telling here. But since internet connectivity is a problem, I guess what you would be doing there is you can record your presentation, like video recorded. Okay. And because if you have this video recorded presentation, then the students, when they have this connectivity, comes in and they could find their time to watch the video. And then if there would be assignments or discussions, then they could join in later. I mean, they could join because they already have availed the video recorded. That's one thing. And also you have the LMS, the sharing of your files and materials are also available during the time when there is this internet connection. And I guess we teachers are very creative and resourceful, and innovative, to really reach out where our students are and help them connect to the lessons and help them feel that we are there. Okay, I hope I have shared with you, Christine. You can do some follow-up if there are things you would like to share with us. Yeah. Thank you so much also for this one, Mr. Yeah. Yeah, we really need specialized professionals to help us in the inclusive education. Definitely, yes. And yeah, and students should speak up when they are bullied. They should tell. And with all this would really depend on the support and the assurance of the teacher. That there is this urge, the teacher must be dynamic, must be, I would say, very supportive in bullying issues. Okay, thank you. And also from Himarani. Yeah. Yes. Teacher have a vital role in giving high impact in students' life. Thank you for that insight too. Yes. Thank you so much, Tanli Uy. Yeah, I believe you do always support students, and that's the beauty of the teachers, because teachers are not just doing their teaching and performing their profession, but they really have the passion to make the difference in the life of the students. Equality to everyone, not to favoritism. Yes, hopefully we all are equal. We treat our students equally. No favoritism. Sometimes people, maybe students, do not get it clear that, some students sometimes would feel that teachers have their favorite students, and some students will begin to shy away, and we don't like that to happen. We let our students feel that they are all treated equally. If, for example, we treat this person, we give much time for this student, one student, because the student needs it. Then we take time, we listen and we find solution to the problem. But that does not mean that we build a special connection, That's another thing. And students are feeling bad about it. So no favoritism. Okay. Welcome. You have here from Lourdes Antonio. Okay. Susan Sa, it's so informational. Thank you for the opportunity. This will help mentoring teachers both in junior high school and senior high school. From Christine L. Pides, a teacher that will not only feed students' mind, but will also touch their hearts and make a difference in their lives. Yes, a beauty of being a teacher. I absolutely agree with you. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry to hear from Dr. Soning, Laos, so that your net is not that sustainable, it's unstable. I hope you get good connection. Okay, so Miss Chow, do we still have some questions from your end there?
I believe that's all the questions that we have for this topic. Again, so thank you very much all of dear participants for your very interactive discussions with Dr. Anita. So before moving to our second video of topic 22, we will have a small break until 10:25. So
Okay.
thank you very much.
A moment, Ms. Chow, before our break. I'd like to
Yes.
have this from Mr. Emmanuel Yao.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Comment here. Can we integrate here in our approach and classroom management the psychological first aid? I'm referring to the impacts of the COVID-19 isolations on learners' family from society, the traumas and the wounds they have. If you ask my opinion, I definitely say yes. Because we see that there is a need and we can integrate, we can tell, we can speak it out with our students. Because this is really very, very necessary. It's crucial on the life of our students, on the lives of our students. So we understand what is classroom management. We understand that it is about managing our students while handling a class. We cannot just afford to ignore the needs of our students, the psychological impact due to the COVID-19. Take time to do it. That would be really a big help on students. I'm very happy that you bring it up. And I hope that you will do it to some others also. That's necessary. That's critical. Because we develop students, not only their mind, we develop students the holistic formation, so that they will become strong. They will become confident. They will become independent. They will become assertive when they are healthy. So we cure whatever is necessary for our students. Not only we cure the mind, we cure the heart, the experience, all things. Thank you so much. And yes, and thank you for bringing it up. So now, Miss Chow, we will have a
Short break.
break.
Yes, we'll have a short break to 10:25. So please come back at that time so that we can continue with our second video. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back. And now we will move to our second video on the topic Equitable Classroom Management. The video will be shared now.
Welcome back. We will now discuss the second topic of today's session, topic 22, Equitable Classroom Management. My presentation's key points include: what is equitable classroom? What are the components of equitable classroom? And how can we make classroom management more equitable? What is equitable classroom? Equitable classroom means making sure every student has the resources and support each student needs to be successful. Each student should be given the tools needed to achieve academic success, and each student's unique talents and abilities should be encouraged and celebrated. Equitable classroom ensures that all students have access to grade-appropriate, academically rigorous, and intellectually challenging curriculum, productive interactions with the teacher, and equal status interactions with peers. Equity versus equality. Equity and equality in the classroom aren't the same thing. Equality means every student gets the same resources and support, which sounds good in theory, but doesn't always work in practice. Imagine handing out a math assignment to students. Every student has his assignment, plus a calculator, pencil, and paper. Equal, right? But it's not equitable. Teachers reach out to students and provide target support to make the assignment equitable. This could include assisting ESL students in understanding instructions in a foreign language, providing text-to-speech technology for visually impaired students, or providing a quiet space for students with ADHD to complete the assignment. When you provide these supports for your students, you ensure that their physical ability, language skills, and other needs do not interfere with their ability to perform well. It is equitable. Equity means providing students with resources that fit their circumstances. Let's then find out the components of equitable classroom. We'll continue to the second key point of my presentation. What are the components of equitable classroom? I would like to share with you the 4 components or 4 C's of an equitable classroom from EdWeek 2018. Component 1, counter-narrative. Component 2, content. Component 3, control. And component 4, communication. First component, counter-narrative. Counter-narratives are written, oral, or visual representation that allow students to examine alternate perspectives that may be missing or underrepresented. The equitable classroom is a classroom that is connected to the lives of diverse learners, different ethnic groups. This connection helps the teacher to understand the negative narratives that persist around the intelligence, beauty, and efficacy of our boys and girls with or without disabilities of different cultural backgrounds and socio-economic status. This knowledge then informs everything about the classroom itself. It informs the message sent to students about themselves, how they are greeted, and even the way the teacher frames ways students speak to and treat one another. It informs the content that is engaged in and the assignment students should complete. A group of students present the imaging narratives. The students are going to respond to the imaging narratives with a counter-narrative that they have researched. The classroom that seeks to define equity must understand that in the absence of a counter-narrative promoted by a caring teacher, every damaging narrative is impossible to remove. Second component, content. Think of the measurement for this quality of an equitable classroom as being a range of mountains versus a flat field. The equitable classroom has a content expert, hopefully the teacher, who builds new content and skill through a dragged and iterative process, peaks and valleys, where students are taken from where they are to the grade level and beyond standard for that skill and or topic. Where there is no equity, there is not a dragged and sometimes circular path forward, but only a flat, one-size-fits-all learning experience that is facilitated by a novice in content who does not take into account the needs and opportunities for scaffolding and enrichment that our children require, for they are all our children. In the equitable classroom, students leave knowing content so well that they can use it to help others and create rich meaning out of their lives. The teacher in the classroom ensures that the content is internalized along with the development of the skill for a balanced learning experience. Third component, control. For this dimension of an equitable classroom, imagine a horizontal line with points on the opposite ends. Then growing out of each point is a large sign. On one side is the word growth. The sign on the other side of the line is the word control. Teachers are rewarded for how well they control or silence their students in the classroom. We are concerned about certain students not being under control. Is aggression always a negative trait? When compared to high-achieving classrooms, the concept of control becomes even more important to classroom equity. Whether those classrooms feature traditionally underserved students or not, control is not the operating construct, but rather collaboration. In too many classrooms full of indigenous and ethnic groups, the overemphasis of control suppresses true academic growth. Students cannot grow if they cannot experiment. Students cannot grow if they are not trusted to struggle with complex texts or even have a content-based discussion that may get heated. The quality of equity in a class with traditionally underserved students can be understood by looking at the imaginary line between control and growth. If the majority of the learning experience is spent on the control side, growth is compromised. And fourth component, communication. This domain of an equitable classroom could be broken into four quadrants: teacher to student, student to student, content-based building, and content-based acquiring. The equitable class is the class that co-creates meaning. The equitable class is one that is not dominated by teacher talk, but by student discussion. Getting students to discuss content has been a real challenge. Challenge comes not from their ability, but because they have spent hours, months, and even years in learning environments that value their copying and listening over their meaning-making and discussion. What can we reasonably expect if a student arrives in 10th grade and is asked to participate in a Socratic seminar after years of guided notes, popcorn reading, and teacher-to-student dialogue? Communication that is frequent and builds content knowledge as well as skill development and logic is an indispensable aspect of the equitable classroom. Counter-narratives, content expertise, the control continuum, communication quality. These are forces that can determine the quality of the equity learning environment you are creating for your students. The quality of equity in your instruction lies at the nexus of the content expertise, communication quality, control continuum, and counter narratives that are present in your practice. Having said, let's move on to the last key point of my presentation. How can we make classroom management more equitable? Prodigy has recommended 8 steps as follows. 1. Start with yourself. 2. Model equity for your students. 3. Be flexible with online learning. 4. Address inappropriate remarks. 5. Create an equitable classroom environment. 6. Accommodate different learning styles. 7. Examine your teaching materials. And 8. Give students a voice. Start with yourself. It's not just students bringing assumptions, experiences, biases, and backgrounds into the classroom. The first step to building equity in a classroom is to challenge your own beliefs. Of course, you're not deliberately excluding students, but there's always work to be done that advances equity. Examine your assumptions about immigration status, socioeconomic status, holidays your students celebrate, where your students or their parents were born, the gender of people from particular professions. When you're aware of your own biases, influences, and cultural background, you're better equipped to thoughtfully engage with your students and build equity in the classroom from the ground up. Model equity for your students. Whether you hold your lessons or reinforce classroom rules, modeling is a tried and true method of learning. Modeling equity in the classroom can help students see and understand appropriate words and actions to use. When you teach, where do you stand in the classroom? Moving around the classroom as you teach can have 2 major benefits. It helps you tune in to how students are learning and where you might need support. And it moves the balance of power throughout the whole classroom instead of just up at the front. It's a way of making literal space for students to join in the learning process and encourage them to participate. If you have the space, try going even further and reorganizing desks so students are sitting in a circle or as part of smaller groups. Use flexible seating and have your classroom model the ideal learning process, collaborative, open, and inviting. Other techniques to help model equity in the classroom include hold your students to high expectations. Students will only perform as well as you expect them to. Don't let assumptions based on past grades, attitudes, or other external factors color your opinion of students. In informal and formal conversations, check your assumptions. Instead of asking students how their new year was, ask them what did they do during their holiday break. Keep discussion, questions open-ended to accommodate a range of responses and lived experiences. And don't shy away from hard conversations. Students of all ages are grappling with the effects of COVID-19. Questions about health, care, food, and other pressing issues. Open space in your classroom to have difficult conversations honestly and empathetically. Be flexible with online learning. Remote and hybrid learning have dramatically highlighted existing inequalities among students when it comes to internet access, food security, family situations, and more. You know this already, but it bears repeating. Flexibility and compassion can make a world of difference in creating an equitable learning environment. Working with families to meet individual needs is essential. Work with each student and identify the students that are having difficulty with being online or having technology issues and check in every day to see how you can help. Whether students are looking after younger siblings so parents can work, working at a part-time job, or unable to access advice, understand the barriers your students face, and create solutions to overcome them. Some best practices for remote learning include deliver a mix of in-person activities and pre-recorded lessons, give time frames to complete assignments and tests so students can complete them around their schedule. Work with students and respect their needs, connect with them to understand their situations and find solutions, provide fun video backgrounds, or let students leave cameras off. Not all students will be comfortable letting their class get a glimpse into their home. Students have their own needs under normal circumstances, and remote learning is not a normal circumstance. Championing your students, getting to know them, and encouraging them to succeed regardless is a sweet step towards equity. Address inappropriate remarks. Every student comes to the classroom with their own set of biases, assumptions, and prejudices. And sometimes they voice them in ways that are inappropriate, leaning on stereotypes and false information. Open dialogue is important in an equitable classroom, but part of building equity is shutting down insensitive remarks so every student feels comfortable bringing their whole selves to class. When a student uses language that doesn't follow classroom guidelines, follow these steps. Step 1, pause. Stop the lesson immediately to focus on the problem. If you let it sit, any discussion loses its impact. Step 2, address. Bring attention to the remark without shaming the student. Explain why it doesn't promote equity and identify why the statement is harmful. And step 3, discuss. Have a respectful class discussion around the biases and background knowledge that might have prompted the students to make the comment. It can be tricky at first, but discussing inappropriate remarks immediately is a powerful tool for promoting equity, much more powerful than calling out the student and passing judgment without a discussion. Create an equitable classroom environment. Small classroom changes can have a big impact on you and your students. Equity isn't just a one-time action. It's an ongoing process that should be baked into your classroom expectations and procedures. And our research highlighted everyday ways teachers can promote equity in the classroom. Use random response strategies. Ask challenging questions equitably of all students. Use multiple ways of assessing student understanding. Create classroom rules collaboratively and enforce them fairly. Seek multiple perspectives and different answers to questions. Show students the why behind how things are done when possible. Acknowledge every student's comment or response, even if it's incorrect. And keep all religious holidays in mind when creating your schedule, not just holidays school is closed for. Teach appropriate language around asking questions about other students' cultures. At the start of a school year or new unit, it can be useful to run activities that help students articulate their own cultural backgrounds and understand where their classmates are starting from. Run a fun and informative activity to build an equitable classroom from the beginning. Have students bring in 3 objects that describe them and aspects of their social identity and put them in a bag or a box. Teacher shares his bags first, modeling self-awareness and reflection as you talk about your cultural and social identity. Encourage students to decorate the outside of their bags or bag with images that describe how they believe others see them. Give each student 3 to 5 minutes to present their bags to the class. After all the presentations have finished, debrief with a journal writing session or a class discussion. Ask students if they learned anything new about their classmates or themselves, and ask them to reflect on how their cultural identity influences the decision you make activities we do, and things we believe. Accommodate different learning styles. In order to promote equity in your classroom, it's important to understand your students and how they learn best. This can be harder when you're teaching remotely, but try sending out a survey, connecting with parents, and meeting with students individually to get a feel for the needs and strengths in your classroom. In general, some best practices include make your online teaching materials accessible, provide captions in your videos, use synchronous and asynchronous teaching methods for students with varied schedules, and record lessons so students can reference them later. Use different materials and ways to connect students to the lesson. Whether you're teaching remotely or in the classroom, use a combination of videos, written materials, worksheets, and hands-on activities to introduce students to new concepts. And use individual, paired, and group activities. When students learn together, they understand different learning styles and learn respect for each other. Examine your teaching materials. Part of building an equitable classroom is examining the voices present in your teaching materials. What stories get told in your classroom? Incorporate literature from local authors and work with your students to examine historical narratives for biased and missing voices. If it's not possible to use new contexts or teaching materials, use them as an object lesson and work with students to critique the biases and assumptions they find. Keep discussion questions open-ended to invite a variety of responses. Write math word problems that incorporate aspects of the different cultures represented in your classroom. And give students a voice. What better way to build equity in the classroom than promoting the voices of your students? Every student has unique experiences and perspectives. Harness them. Students want and need meaningful ways to voice their opinions in the classroom. So involve them in planning classroom events and actively seek their feedback on what's happening in the classroom. This is especially important when students are learning remotely and you have fewer ways to gauge understanding, engagement, and enthusiasm. To make sure involvement is equitable, try these strategies. Seek out the perspectives of students who don't share as much, and make sure that outgoing students don't dominate. Unequal opportunities for involvement can do serious harm to equity in your classroom. Find ways for students to offer input in different ways. Class discussions are a great tool, but not every student feels comfortable sharing with the whole class. Set up an online forum or hold office hours for one-on-one discussions with students. And implement the feedback students give. When students see that you value their input and take it seriously, they understand that their voices and opinions matter. Where possible, take feedback seriously and build it into your classroom and teaching. When every student has a voice in the classroom, you're well on your way to equity. Equity in the classroom is a process, not an immediate result, and promoting equity can have a whole host of benefits for every student in your classroom. Consider the 4 C's and the 8 steps above and ask yourself, what can I do today to start building a more equitable classroom? I just finished my presentation. I hope you can glean some ideas and insights from my presentation that you can apply in your own context to promote equity in your classroom. I'd like to close my presentation with a few thoughts. Equity can have a lot of different definitions depending on the context, but at its core, the concept involves giving everyone in a situation the specific tools that each student needs to be successful. In the classroom, If all of your students are given all that they need to thrive, a level of mutual respect can be formed between teacher and students. This leads to productive classrooms, with teachers feeling good about their lessons and students actively engaged in learning. Promoting equitable classroom is about teachers choosing to embrace the unique backgrounds, identities, and experiences that their individual students bring to the table. By giving all students an equitable start, teachers can lead the way for better social and economic outcomes for students, regions, and society as a whole. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you very much. And now we will move to our Q&A section with Dr. Anita. And I can see that in the chat box, we're starting to have some questions.
So we have here in the chat box from Mr. Emmanuel Yap. Okay, the question here is that I'd like to ask when exactly equity in the classroom is a priority. Is it when discrimination, difficulties, and scarcity are evident? Or is there any other subtle red light signs to it? Very, very good and interesting question. I would say, first let us make clear, I would say, understanding, a common understanding, I would say, between inclusive or equality and equity. In an inclusive classroom, for example, we students are treated equal. Okay, they are, I would say, given. Each one is given what is necessary. As I mentioned in the presentation, for example, if you have this math problem, the students are going to solve. So each student is having a calculator, a paper, a pencil. That's equal, each of them. Okay. But then, is it equitable? Then I said in the presentation, no, it's not. Equitable or equity happens when each student, depending on his or her needs, on context, on circumstance, is given support. For example, they have all the required materials, but this student could not understand well the instructions, the directions, could not comprehend, maybe because of language barrier. If the teacher is going to assist and support the student to understand better, that's one sign of equitable. See, you address the need of individual student. If, for example, the student has found difficulty reading the materials because of eye impairment, so you are there to help the student the best way you could. That is one indicator of equity. So again, when we speak of equity here, we are referring to addressing the needs of the individual student. In the equality, we address the needs of all students fairly. But in the equitable classroom management, we identify the needs of individual student and we support. That's the difference now. So the question here is that the question is when exactly equity in the classroom is a priority. I would say equity in the classroom is a priority, is a necessity when you see that there are individual needs of your students. So you have student who has difficulty in hearing, you have the student who has difficulty in understanding the language because the student has another language probably, or the student is in using a wheelchair, different forms of needs of the students. Then you have to look into this so that your classroom management becomes equitable. You have to address the needs so that they will perform well. They will be able to answer the questions, they will be able to participate, and that their voice is heard. Okay. So that's the first question. Or the second one, is it when discrimination, difficulties, and scarcities are evident? Or I think I've answered that also, no? But then it starts on the individual needs of the students. That's basically what equitable is. Because we understand that the inclusive, a while ago in our presentation, our discussion about inclusive, we already treated each student fairly, equal treatment, no favoritism. That's inclusive, equality. But we narrow down our understanding of classroom management in terms of addressing the individual needs of the students, be it discrimination, be it difficulties in understanding, be it disabilities, physical, and be it the scarcity of materials or whatever will that be, then we are there to assist our students. Okay. So again, I would like to point out that from inclusive, from equal treatment, fair treatment to students, we narrow down, we look into the individual student and the need of each student in our class and address that and support the learning process of the students individually. That is equity. But again, we will be able only to address the individual needs of our students when we know our students. Because individual needs may not only be in the form of tangible materials, it can be in the form of intangible. We don't know the background of our students. Maybe the students, this particular student is not cooperating or not participating and silent in the class. Maybe because this student has a family problem affecting his or her study. Or maybe the student is feeling ill. Or maybe the student has no breakfast. Or maybe the student has a quarrel with the siblings at home. We just don't know. How do we address the individual needs of our students? Once we're able to listen and really understand and support our students, that is, I would say, equitable classroom management. I hope I have shared my thoughts. Okay, yeah, by the way, you mentioned about red light or signs. What are the red lights? Probably so student is silent. Student is aloof. the student would prefer to be isolated and not communicating, not connecting with the students. I mean, these are some signs. And another one is the students cannot perform well. And why is that? Individual student. We know teachers, we have different indicators to know our students where they are. And then we have where equity is important for everyone. Okay, this is from Kin Fan Min. Thank you for the appreciation. Equity is important for everyone. I think that saying is easy, but doing practically is very difficult. I definitely agree with you. So how could teachers implement practically in class without discrimination? So I guess what you are referring here is that discrimination among students or between students. So you would like to prevent that to happen in equity, to be able to perform equitable classroom management. How teachers can do that. It all lies on really like knowing your students, have very good relationships with your students. Why? It is because only when we understand our students, we are able to connect with them and we are able to see where they are at. And then we can teach them, like about discrimination, about respect, about acceptance. These are values that we uphold. And then I guess it would help. But again, as mentioned in my presentation, teachers should model equity. Because when we model it, students will follow. Students are good followers. They would rather, and they could easily follow what is unsaid, our actions, than what we say. Show to them what is equity by your practice in the school, in your class in particular. They will follow. Aside from, of course, you're outwardly teaching them, do it yourself. Model equity. Okay. And model not to practice discrimination. Yes, but acceptance and respect, regardless who our students are, where they come from, and their level of competency and other issues. I hope I have answered your query, Ken Tanwin. If not, then please say so. Okay, thank you. I got here. So I hope you won't forget the 4 C's in equitable classroom management. The first C is counter narrative. The second C is content. The third C is control. But control should not be dominant, because when we are very strict also in the class, then we don't give students a space. We would like to listen to the voice of our students. So I would say rather collaboration is very not very ideal, but very realistic, in terms of maximizing the learning of the students. But we need control. especially in inclusive, classroom, because students are diverse and they need kind of discipline. That's very important. But we see we balance the control and the growth. We would like students to grow further with the control. It should not be control higher and then growth down, lower. No, it should be, we get the growth higher a bit to allow students to voice out their ideas and opinions. All students practicing equality and equity, and then the control will follow. It's just that we need control, whatever. It's very important. That's why we have rules and regulations. We have school policies, and we model, we practice that. And then the last one is communication. Now, communication is really very, very important. It's not fundamental. See, how can the students voice their ideas and opinions if they could not communicate their ideas? So we develop students' communication skills. And hopefully our content will develop that. By content, our instruction, our teaching strategies would develop students to communicate, to speak out. I have mentioned in my presentation that we blame our students of not communicating. They are silent, they are quiet. But perhaps we look at also, this is a reflection. We pause a moment and say, am I not a contributor of this one? Did I allow my students to communicate? I might be a teacher who is practicing teacher to student dialogue. I am the mouthpiece and you are the recipient. Just receive. So that does not make students able to participate and communicate. So that's why communication in equitable classroom management, let the student, each one, communicates. That's quite impossible, when we are conducting a large classroom. How can I get my students speak out? They have this like 50, 60 students in one class. It's quite impossible. And I agree, definitely, yes. It's impossible. But you can find ways. You can strategize. Maybe this class, this part of the students, another one, you can find ways that each student will be able to speak out, maybe in talking and speaking, and also in writing. Can we communicate through written form? It's different ways. They can also communicate through images, through infographics, and many things. Point is, students should communicate. We have 4 communication skills, right? We have listening, speaking, reading, and writing. We can use these forms of communication to allow our students to communicate. So those are the 4 C's of equitable classroom management: content, counter-narrative, content, control, and communication. You can explore more on that, really. And it's amazing if we can transform our students from being silent and not talking, to be able to speak out and share their ideas, and confident and assertive. And then we say, oh, we are ready for higher education. If that would be like senior high school, then they will be ready to college. If that be grade 5, you're ready to grade 6. So we have in mind, what are we preparing our students for? We just don't stick to that level where we are teaching, but we aim high, we uplift students to higher and higher. All and inclusive, and provide each one in equitable to maximize each student learning process.
Thumbs up, ma'am. Thumbs up.
Thank you.
Job
Yeah.
with that.
So we have here communication is what from Mr. Tapia. Communication is all we need. It's connection where we can decipher the needs and responses. Very well said. Thank you.
Doctor, you should be the undersecretary of DepEd. You should be there as undersecretary.
Thank you. Oh, that will be great. That is a privilege.
We will talk to Vice Sarah.
I second the motion, ma'am. I second the motion.
Diba, sir? Sir Emmanuel?
Yes, sir.
We will recommend, should we have the right to recommend?
Yes, yes.
Thumbs up.
Yes, I'm not, sir.
But we have done a new defense.
Yeah. Actually, I'm attending a seminar right now. That is why I'm having a multitasking here.
Congrats, sir.
Yeah. Ma'am, thank you very much, ma'am, for that wonderful insight. Thank you very much.
Active participation.
Yes, ma'am. We will try to use that knowledge to our teachers in the field.
Yeah.
Sir Iman, where are you from, Sir Iman?
I'm from Bukidnon, Philippines.
Okay. We are from Zamboanga del Norte, Dipolog City.
Wow.
From Mindanao.
Yeah.
From Mindanao with love.
Yes. Silingan ra.
Kumusta dia, sir?
Okay na. All is well.
wala na nagprotesta dira.
So far walay ga protesta diri sa amo. Peace loving people here sa Mindanao, especially sa Bukidnon. We are at the heart of Mindanao, ang Bukidnon. Very peaceful place.
Yes, sir.
We are neighbor.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Cagayan de Oro is just a couple of miles away.
Okay. Soon we will have vacation in Bukidnon.
Yeah, and also we wish to go and visit your place in Zamboanga. It's nice.
Well, there will be time. I will
See you in
visit
Zamboanga.
Xavier, ma'am. If I can have time, I will visit you in Xavier University. You're from Xavier? Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Xavier University si Ma'am Pablina. See.
I did not get you.
Actually, it's nice to be here in the platform. Maniod to na, sir.
Thank you so much for attending your active
Thank you.
Yeah, and to all participants, I'm so glad that you have joined us and really took time of the appointments and other schedules you have. Then you spare your time with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So before closing our session today, I would like to remind with some important notes. First, please complete the assignment on the 2 Google Forms before Monday, June the 6th, and your assignment will be subjected to evaluation before we issue the certificate to your email. Second, your name on the assignment will be the one used in your certificate of completion, so please make sure to input it correctly. Finally, we have shared in the chat box the links for assignments and today's PPTs. Please kindly download or save them to your window. These links are also available on our program's website at www.vncmail.org/modular-online-training/modules. Additionally, please also fill in your attendance link for today's session. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we will hope that we will see you at the June section of this modular online training. Thank you very much.
Thank you.